Yes, Prabhuji. Let me just start the recording on the YouTube. Give me like 10 seconds, then we'll start. Okay. One more second. Yeah. So I think today's class, the agenda. Yes, Prabhuji. Let me just start the recording on the YouTube. Give me like 10 seconds. Sorry. Yeah, so I think today's agenda, I think has been noted. We want to start with two group presentations pending from last week. And then Prabhuji will have the chapter 4 overview and class from you, followed by any Q&A from devotees if they want to clarify anything. So without further ado, I think group 1, whenever you are ready, you can start your presentation, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yeah, we will start.
Please, Prabhu. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm sharing my screen. Is it visible for everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you go to the first page? First page. Yes.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Today we are going to talk about Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, verses 17 and 18. It talks about the qualities of a self-realized person. Next slide. Yeah. So that from the translation, he talks about but for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization and who's satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. And a self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason for not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. So here the verses 17 and 18 describes the qualities of the self-realized person. In verse 17, Lord Krishna says that for a person who's already situated in the spiritual platform and is satisfied with his own self, he has not got to do anything else. He has surpassed those stages of offering sacrifice, worship, prayers, and everything, one who is situated in a self-satisfied state. And one with no material desires and who's already purified has no need of material duties, nor has he any aversion to them. So here Srila Prabhupada quotes multiple great examples like Sukadeva Goswami, Jhada Bharada, and Haridas Thakura, who were in the stage of surpassing the prescribed duties as they have attained purification, maturity, knowledge, and detachment, but still performing their prescribed duties to set an example for others. So here the words Atmarati, who talks about one who focus of life is simply for self-realization, one who is simply satisfied with the self-realization, that his real relationship with Krishna as his eternal servant. So in this verse, Atmarati, Atmatripta, and Atmani Santushta. So when a person is turned inwards, satisfied inwards, and illuminated inwards, at the time a person doesn't seek anything external, then we are freed from external obligations. So the verse Tashyam Tashya Karyam na Vidyate, for such a person there is no duty. So in this purport, Srila Prabhupada cuts down to this practical level. Such a Krishna consciousness person is no longer interested in any material activities, and he no longer takes pleasure in any arrangements like wine, women, and similar infatuations. So one does not need anything material.
Hare Krishna. Bhagavad Gita 3.18, free from material obligation. So Krishna says, by discharging of duty, the person has no purpose to fulfill by doing the duty. But then at the same time, the person has no reason not to do duty also. The person is a transcendental. So the doing the duty or not doing the duty, both are equal. Such a person is neither dependent on other living being, nor does he take a shelter of any living being. Here, Krishna is talking about the renunciate, who are either sannyasi or those who are practice jnana yoga for attaining the liberation. as they are not taking anything from anyone. So they need not give anything to anyone. Srila Prabhupada explains from devotional perspective. A Krishna consciousness man does not take the shelter of any person, man, or a demigod. Whatever he does in Krishna consciousness is sufficient in the discharge of obligation. Hence, the devotee knows Krishna, but the transcendental may not know Krishna. And only by the mercy of devotee and the Supreme Lord they may develop the clear understanding of what that absolute truth is. Conclusion here, the only person free from the duties is the self-realized man, because he has no desire to fulfill or any purification to achieve. If Krishna consciousness movement is spread and rightly understood, then the people will be satisfied. There will be no more hankering for any artificial thing. As soon as one goes on realizing the transcendental nature of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, they will feel fully satisfied. Nothing can enchant them, nothing can drag them from this platform, and for them, they are nothing else to do.
So to summarize, we can see from these verses how a self-realized soul is free from all material duties. So how a person can be free from all other obligations except his activities in Krishna consciousness due to the following reasons. Because Krishna consciousness purifies, it removes all impiety, and one is given the activities as per the Shastra and his Guru. So, and while letting him fulfill his desires in a regulated way, and the Krishna conscious person is fixed in his own identity. So, because his eternal relationship with the Supreme is understood, and he is confident, and he is self-illuminated, and he loses all material interest, and he is free from obligation because he does not take shelter of any person, a man or a demigod. So, hence, he is free from all obligations. So the only person free from duties is a self-realized man because he has no desires to fulfill nor any purification to achieve. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Very nicely succinctly put. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Okay, group 2 may start their presentation.
Hare Krishna, can you see my screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. So for group 2, we had verses 19 and 20. Nevertheless, perform prescribed duties. So verse 319, the translation, therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the Supreme. So the general context here that our friends in group 1 nicely put together, the definition of the self-realized person. The general context here is that, this is talking about a self-realized person, a person who's Atma-gyani or Paramatma-gyani, and they continue to perform their prescribed duties. And there are a series of selfless actions here. So they perform duties without attachment to the outcomes. As such, they remain free from bondage of action, nishkam karma, in working without attachment. And that leads to the achievement of Supreme Lord or liberation, moksha. So in essence, this verse really emphasizes that performing one's duty without attachment to the results, and it encourages acting out of a sense of duty rather than desire for personal gain. By doing so, one achieves the highest good and contributes to the welfare of the world and attains the Supreme. This is also an answer to the doubt whether man would attain moksha while engaged in practical duties of the world, and whether work could lead to liberation. For verse 320, the translation is, kings such as Janaka attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. And the main themes here are really the role of an exemplary leader. This is an example set by great leaders and their influence in the society. And this verse specifically explains that even kings like King Janak attained perfection by performing their duties. The verse also underscores the idea that leaders should perform their responsibilities diligently to set higher standards for others, demonstrating that fulfilling one's duty can lead to spiritual advancement and contribute positively to the world. So the general themes here are really roles of an exemplary leader, duty for the welfare of society, inspiration through action, and selfless service. Thank you so much, everyone.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Nice and concise, and still gives the message. So thank you for working to make it crisp. Appreciate it, Hare Krishna. Okay, so we will be starting the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Transcendental Knowledge. And I wanted to take this opportunity to give you an overview of the chapter. You also, in terms of your pre-work, heard the first 2 lectures. So I think after I give briefing, it's possible that some of your questions will be answered. It's also possible that you might have more questions. So we'll keep some time after that for Q&A. So let me go ahead and share my presentation. Okay. So as I mentioned, the 4th chapter is titled Transcendental Knowledge. So quick recap, and I realize it's a little bit of repetition, but I find that it's good to keep reminding ourselves of the journey that Krishna is taking us on. And repetition is also a good way for us to deepen our realization. So beginning from the 1st chapter, we see that Arjuna is refusing to fight. He gives seemingly valid reasons, but still not convinced about it himself. So he surrenders to Krishna and requests for instruction. So now we are in the 2nd chapter. Krishna basically begins by instructing Arjuna about the nature of the soul. So the verses from 30 verses from 211 are all about the nature of the soul, how it relates to the body, and the process of transmigration. So we discussed that this is the only time in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna talks specifically about the nature of the soul, because it's fundamental to the rest of whatever he speaks. So the point is made that if somebody is not able to accept this premise of that every living entity is a soul that is in a gross body, then essentially the Bhagavad Gita is simply a book of philosophy for them. Only when one at least theoretically accepts the presence of the soul with its characteristics of eternality, immutability, invincibility, its relationship to the temporal material body, do the instructions of Bhagavad Gita make any relevance? So Krishna says that at one point, makes that the foundation, and then he moves on. So we did say that the second chapter is a summary of the Bhagavad Gita. And summary means that whatever is summarized in the second chapter is expanded in the rest of the Gita, with the exception of this 30 verses where Krishna talks about the nature of the soul. He does not expand upon it. So he kind of leaves it as it is. In addition to it, later on, Krishna, in the second chapter, he speaks about karma, which gets expanded from in chapters 3 to 6. He speaks about Gyan, which will be expanded in chapters 13 to 18. And he speaks about Bhakti, which are basically expanded in verses in chapters 7 to 12. So what happens in the third chapter, right? So third chapter begins with Arjun expressing his confusion between action and inaction, or between karma and gyan. This is because Krishna seems to, at different points, glorify or condemn karma, right? So Krishna talks about the importance of karma and for satisfying material desires, but then he also criticizes karma. But people who follow karma kand, he calls them fools. Krishna seems to glorify Gyan also, right? He talks about how when one is unaffected and situated as if immovable, like when it's in the last set of verses when Krishna describes the characteristics of the Sthita Pragya, then he talks about how the person is like inert, right? So Arjun kind of says, Krishna, help me understand what is better, karma and or Gyan. And the focus in the third chapter is this understanding that Krishna gives to Arjun, that one should not look upon karma and Gyan as alternate paths. They are simply different milestones on the same path. So when a person is purified by the performance of prescribed duties, sakam karma, then the person will reach the state of nishkam karma. Because the nature of prescribed duties is, so even if they are prescribed duties in karma kand, there is also regulation built into them. So there is this understanding that yes, there is avenues to enjoy, but the enjoyment should be as per the rules and regulations. So when one is restricting themselves from whimsical enjoyment, then one is already beginning to practice some form of detachment. Prabhupada gives the example of how a Brahman will take a cold water bath in winter, or a housewife will cook in the kitchen in summers, in the heat. So they will tolerate bodily discomfort because of the understanding that it's their duty. So that tolerating is the seed of detachment. And when that detachment builds, then one transforms from sakam karma to nishkam karma. So one must act as per their adhikar. Adhikar means as per the advancement. So when one still has desires, then one must act religiously to satisfy the desires and get purified. When one is sufficiently purified, then one reaches the stage of nishkam karma. right? And then Krishna makes this point that even if one has reached the mature stage of Nishkam Karma, which means that the desires have been extinguished to the point that there is not fear of them appearing again. Krishna says even then one is recommended to act, to set an example for others. Right? So we saw the presentation today where Krishna gives the example of Maharaj Janak, that he was advanced, he was completely purified of material desires, but externally he was acting as a materialist. He was performing his duties as a king, as a father, and the understanding is that because such people are great personalities, other people will try to emulate them. So whereas Maharaj Janak might give up all his responsibility and not be affected by it, but one who is still not reached that stage of purification would whimsically give up their activities and then essentially come to the stage of what Krishna calls as mithyachara or falgu vairagya, which is false renunciation. Now, when Krishna is glorifying in the 3rd chapter the potency of karma, that how karma it helps a person in every stage. For a person who is full of desires, karma helps them make advancement by piously fulfilling those desires. For a person who is freed of desires, karma still helps them by offering a safety net, by offering avenues for further purification, and by giving them an opportunity to inspire others. So then Arjun's question is that if karma is performing your prescribed duties is so potent, why do people perform sinful activities? Right? So Krishna says that it is because of lust. And in this context, lust, so generally when we use the word lust, it is a more in a man-woman sexual context, that a man is lusting after a woman or vice versa. Here the context is a little bit wider. So lust is essentially used as a strong desire to acquire something. Right. And we see that in conventional use also. Somebody might say, the person is lusting to get a better house or a bigger car or more elevated position, etc., etc. So Krishna says it is because of lust. And where all does the lust sit? It sits in the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. So then Arjuna is like, if it is so pervasive, then what hope that is? What hope there is? And Krishna says there is hope. And what is that hope? The hope is through knowledge, gyan. So he says one should slay this demon in the form of lust through the weapon of knowledge. So that sets the stage for the 4th chapter to be spoken, which is transcendental knowledge. Now, one of the questions that comes up is that we often say that the first section is about karma. What is Gyan doing there? Right? And after we see in the 6th chapter about Astang Yoga, why are they in the section of karma? And the reason is that Gyan here is being spoken in the context of karma. So this Gyan is essentially that understanding by which one is properly situated in one's activities. So it is not the knowledge of, not specifically the knowledge of the Vedas or the Vedantas, the conventional understanding of Gyan. It's not that. This is essentially Gyan that is seeded from karma and that protects karma. And the same thing for Astang Yoga, that Astang Yoga is presented in the context of karma again. as a stage of further maturity of karma. That's why they come under the umbrella of karma. So this is the connection that at the end of the third chapter, Krishna tells Arjuna about the importance of karma and how lust forces one to sinful activities. That recommendation is knowledge as a means to protect against lust. And now the stage for the fourth chapter is being set. So as we will see that in the fourth chapter, Krishna will speak about, so Krishna's intention is to speak about knowledge of the jiva. But he takes a little bit of a detour and he speaks about himself also. So there are two knowledges that are spoken about, knowledge about Krishna and knowledge about the jiva. So developing this topic of Gyan, karma, the understanding is that you perform your duty. Gyan is understanding what your duty is. Because how can you do something if you don't know? So a lot of us do things because others are doing it or because we are told to do it. But if we have to develop conviction in our actions, then that understanding of what the duty is also important. Then the maturity of karma is nishkam, be detached from your actions. And what Gyan takes us is to the next level, is to understand that you are the soul. Right? So nishkam karma is essentially acting without desires to enjoy the fruits of your activity. And when nishkam karma matures, then it gives atmagyan. So it gives knowledge of the self. And when atmagyan matures, it gives paramatma gyan. Right? Which is why it is said that the maturity of gyan is astan yoga, wherein one understands the position of the super soul. Karma protects one from sinful activities, and Gyan protects one from sinful activities by providing the armor of knowledge. So in karma, as long as one is doing one's prescribed activities, one is protected from sin. In Gyan, the understanding also is of why one is doing a particular activity and why is one not doing another set of activities. And by that knowledge, one is protected from the inadvertent performance of sinful activities. So the broad division of the chapter is divided into 5 sections. The first section is so where to get the knowledge from, right? Because if it is something very precious, then it needs to be obtained from a bona fide source. If you're buying a diamond, you need to go to a diamond store. Prabhupada would say that if you go to an iron store to buy a diamond, you will definitely get cheated. So one needs to know that this is the shop that sells what I need. So Krishna's intention is to clearly talk about the source of the knowledge. Then second section talks about how one applies the knowledge, right? So getting the knowledge, and Krishna basically will say that I am the source of all the bona fide knowledge, right? So and we'll discuss this when we look at section 1. Applying this knowledge helps one develop the understanding of doership. Okay. So doership is important. So we said that how Gyan helps in determining what is activities that should be done and should not be done, right? And understanding in which situation who is doing the activities. Sometimes the activities are done to you. Sometimes you do the activities. And this doership is just like Krishna. He expands upon the notion of karma throughout the Bhagavad Gita. He will also expand on the notion of doership throughout Gita. And the two are related because karma means performing activities. Doership means the who is performing that activities. Now, superficially, one might think this is a straightforward question that yes, the jiva is doing the activities, but there is more to it. That's what makes karma so complex, that the same activity in one situation may be considered to be sinful. Like Prabhupada gives the example that when a soldier kills in the battlefront, he's given a medal. And the same soldier, when he comes back to the city and kills somebody, then he's imprisoned. So he's doing the same activity, but different circumstances, right? So the understanding of the doership, what is impeding, what is causing these actions, that is very important. And Krishna will continue to develop this all the way till the 18th chapter. When we are in the 5th chapter, by that time, Krishna has sufficiently developed it, and I'll take some time exclusively to talk about this notion of doership. That who are all the doers that Krishna talks about? How do they relate to one another? And knowing that, how can we make sure that we are properly situated? But we'll do that in 5th chapter. Here, Krishna is introducing that concept. The next set of verses talk about Nishkam, Krishna's favorite topic. And like I said, it appears in one way or the other in almost all the chapters that you have got the knowledge from a bona fide source, you understand the notion of doership. How do you apply it to become detached from the fruits of the activities and the activities? The last section is to some extent a continuation of the first section, right? Because both of them are similar, getting the knowledge. The first section talks about a top-down approach, and the 4th section talks about a bottom-up approach. So in the first section, Krishna talks about getting the knowledge from him, right from the top. And in the 4th section, he talks about how does the jiva get the knowledge ascending, right? So it kind of complements each other. And then finally, Krishna, this is the Falstuti. What is the advantage of this? That one is freed of all sinful reactions. Okay, so recap again. So Krishna ended the 3rd chapter by saying that in order to avoid sinful activities, protect yourself from lust, right? And Arjuna says, lust is very powerful. It is overwhelming. So Krishna says, control it by your senses. Now, this is an interpolated conversation, right? So taking a little bit of liberty over here, but it captures the spirit of the exchange. So Krishna says, you control the lust by your senses. And Arjuna says that the senses are strong, difficult to control the senses. So use your mind, right? So higher than the senses is the mind. So generally, when when something that is lower on it cannot be controlled, one goes up to the next level to control it. So Krishna is saying use the mind to control the senses. And then Arjuna says mind is also fickle, which is another way of saying that mind is also subject to the impact of lust. Now, higher than the mind is intelligence. It is more subtle and more powerful. So use your intelligence. So then Arjuna is like, but intelligence is so subtle. Now, senses you can control by saying that I will not eat sweets. So if there are sweets present on the table, I'll simply not eat it, controlling the senses. If that is difficult, then through the mind one can convince oneself that sweets are bad for me, bad for my health, or whatever it is. But even higher than the mind is intelligence. And Arjuna is like, it's very subtle, because it is who I am. It is that which I'm using to control the mind and the senses, how to control the intelligence. So now Krishna talks about external input. So far he's saying control your senses by your mind, by your intelligence. Now he says control intelligence by knowledge. Arjuna says, okay, that part I can understand. Where do I get this knowledge from? Krishna says from the Bhagavad Gita, right? So then Arjuna's question is, what makes the Gita special? And Krishna says, it is special because I spoke it. Arjuna's question is then, what makes you special? And Krishna's answer is that I am God. So this is where Krishna steps out from the shadows and presents himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the first time. And as you can see from the flow of the conversation, that Krishna is not really ready, or rather he does not think that Arjuna is ready to accept him as God. Because Arjuna has not been sufficiently purified. But the matter of fact is that, so this is what we called as emergency interference. That when Krishna says, Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanam Avyayam, that I spoke this knowledge to Vivasvan, sun god, and sun god spoke it to Ikshvaku. So he's saying this knowledge is special because it is coming from me. I spoke it to Vivasvan, the sun god. And Arjuna is like, the sun god is ancient, and you and I are peers, because Krishna is the cousin of Arjuna. They're about the same age. So he says, how can I understand? Right? So in fact, what he says is aparam. So he calls Krishna aparam, that you are inferior, and param bhavati, and then he says that the sun god is superior. So superior, he's a demigod, superior because he is older. So because Krishna wants to make sure that this knowledge is received in the proper frame of mind, he steps out prematurely. So Krishna's original plan is that he actually would step out in the 7th chapter. And we see there Krishna openly speaking now about himself. But now for a few verses he steps out, and then he begins to talk about himself. So the point that Krishna makes in these 10 verses, so these 10 verses are what are known as the epistemology verse. Epistemology means knowledge of knowledge. How does one understand the knowledge to be bona fide? Right? So Krishna says, how do you understand the knowledge to be bona fide? One, it should be coming from me and me only. Second, that it should be coming through a disciplic succession. Evam parampara praptam. Right? So these 2 points Krishna makes. So as we know that in amongst Vaishnavas, there are only 4 paramparas that are descending from Krishna. So Krishna gave this knowledge to 4 direct disciples. He gave it to Brahma, and from Brahma comes the Brahma Sampradaya, and ISKCON is a part of Brahma Sampradaya. The prominent Acharya over there is Sripad Madhavacharya. He gave this knowledge to Lakshmi Devi, and from that Sri Sampradaya comes in. The prominent Acharya there is Sripad Ramanujacharya, and it's very prominent in the south. Then third is he gave this knowledge to Lord Shiva. And from that comes the Rudra Sampradaya. And the prominent Acharya there is Vishnujan Swami. In the current day and age, the Pushti Marg, most of Gujarat, they are followers of the Rudra Sampradaya. And then there is the fourth one, which is the four Kumars. And the four Kumars are more in the north central part of their Sampradaya, Kumar Sampradaya. They are in the north central part. I forget the name of the Acharya there.
Nimbarkacharya.
So there's Nimbarkacharya who appears over there, right? So Krishna establishes himself as the source of the knowledge, and he establishes the importance of parampara. And this is very, very important. So if you notice that in the introduction, before the introduction of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada also talks about parampara. Like he talks about what is his qualification to speak about Bhagavad Gita, right? So he talks about how he is connected to Krishna through the Sampradaya, right? And the reason is that he wants to establish his own credentials. But because I'm connected to a bona fide Sampradaya, I'm qualified to speak about it. So the point that Krishna is making is that get it from the right source, Krishna, and get it from the right medium, which is parampara. And the immediate benefit knowledge is one understands what needs to be done and what should not be done, right? And the ultimate benefit is that it sets one on the path of knowing Krishna. So now we come to the section of so one is now getting this knowledge. What does one do with it? So one earlier on, Krishna spoke about this cycle of yajna, right? How from the Vedas one gets the knowledge of how to perform your prescribed duties, yajnas, demigods are pleased, right? And where is the Vedas coming from? Krishna. Then Krishna speaks about Chaturvarnya Maya Sreshta, right? How he divides the whole society into the four varnas of Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. So where is that coming from? Krishna. Right. So the point that Krishna makes is that while he is doing everything, he is at the same time neutral. So what is the conclusion? That the jiva is responsible for its action, right? So there is accountability that is apportioned to the living entity for the actions that they do. So sometimes or oftentimes people will justify their actions as being a result, circumstantially being forced to act, or they will say, who am I but I'm a puppet in the hand of Krishna. Whether I do pious or sinful activities, Krishna is doing it. So Krishna is disambiguating the notion. He says, I'm neutral. While I create all this, but I am unaffected by it, just like a judge may create the whole legal system, but he is not going to induce somebody to perform criminal activities so that the person is judged by the legal system, right? So he may use those laws to punish a person or reward a person, but he's definitely not inducing the person to act in one way or another. The person is himself responsible, right? So once the jiva develops this accountability that I am responsible for everything good and bad that happens, then they become more, they take more responsibility for their actions. Now, like I said, the doership is a notion that Krishna will develop more and more. Like while he says that the jiva is the doer, at some point he will say the jiva is not the doer. I'm the doer. And then sometimes he will say that somebody else is the doer. But for now, this is the point that Krishna is making, that when the jiva develops this understanding that they're responsible for their own action, when they see the example of Krishna, that how Krishna is doing so much, but is still unaffected by it, then he can be inspired to follow in the footsteps of Krishna. So just like, so essentially what Krishna is doing is Nishkam Karma. Now Krishna is Krishna, there's no notion of Sakam or Nishkam. But for the sake of setting an example, you see that Krishna is doing so much. He's creating the whole universe, he's destroying it, he's maintaining it, creating the Vedas, creating the Chaturvarnyam. But he keeps saying, I'm like water on the lotus leaf. I'm always unaffected. Why? Because he's not entangled by the absorption in the fruits of the activity. He creates the 4 varnas, but he's not one way or the other affected that a person becomes a Brahman or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or a Shudra. That's their choice. And he creates this whole cycle of fruitive activities in the Vedas, but he does not force anybody to take to it or does not pull anybody out from it. And because of this neutrality, he's always unaffected. So Krishna is saying, just like I am busy doing so many things, but always unaffected, so can you be, right? So that's the key to Nishkam Karma, right? So one who begins to meditate on this quality of Krishna also begins to develop that quality, right? So the first thing that happens is, and this is the third section, that there is the prohibition from doing sinful activities, right? Don't do vikarma, but follow pious activities. By the execution of pious activities, one reaches the stage of transcendental knowledge. Knowledge about Krishna, knowledge about why one is doing activities, what is pious, what. So one reaches the stage of Nishkam Karma, right? And through the maturity of Nishkam Karma, one develops Atmagyan. And this stage is a little bit mystical, right? So the earlier stages we can understand by the progression of one's realization, that one understands the injunctions in the scriptures and performs the activities. One gets a better understanding of what to do, what not to do. One gets an understanding of how to detach from the reaction. So one reaches the stage of Nishkam Karma. But when one matures from the stage of Nishkam Karma, then one begins to see oneself as the spirit soul. One does not see oneself as the body anymore, right? So this is the maturity of Nishkam Karma. And the point that Krishna is making, they are same because one leads to the other, right? So they are not alternate paths. Karma is the initial path and the Gyan is the more mature part. So when Krishna keeps saying karma and Gyan is the same, but karma is better, right? So how can it be the same and better? They're the same because they're both on the same path. Karma is better based on the adhikar of the person, because Gyan requires that one has already reached the stage of Nishkam. If one has not reached the stage of Nishkam, then karma is better. If one has reached the stage of Nishkam, Gyan is the way. So that's why this seemingly contradictory instructions from Krishna is confusing Arjun, and now Krishna is clarifying that. Krishna then speaks about the application of the knowledge, that how does one get this knowledge, right? So for the brahmacharis, so the first step, as we said, is control of the senses. So for the brahmacharis, the control of the senses is to study the scriptures and hear from the spiritual master. For grahastha, it is controlled enjoyment and giving in charity. For vanaprastha, it is austerities and astanga. And for sannyas, it is celibacy and detachment. Right? So this is how the cycle of karma and gyan work. So I put Vigyan over here as a placeholder. Vigyan is actually, so this is realized knowledge, and this is something that gets spoken in the next chapter. The 5th chapter is all about Vigyan. But just keep this cycle in mind that Gyan on the platform of karma will result in Vigyan. And Vigyan results in, and it's a self-feeding cycle. So when acts in knowledge, one develops realizations. Right? So this is essentially the message that gets developed in the 5th chapter. So what is the advantage of this knowledge? One is protected from sinful activities. One reaches the stage of Nishkam. One matures into Atmagyan. And the final stage, which Prabhupada brings to focus, and which is the ultimate goal, is Bhagavad Gyan. Right? So knowledge of the self is still incomplete realization. You may know you're the soul, but there is a super soul also. So once that knowledge of the self is manifest, then one inquires further about the nature of the Supreme Lord. And that's when Bhagavad Gyan comes, which is why I was saying that only after Atma Gyan, Krishna will present himself in the 7th chapter. Because by that time, he has spoken enough to Arjun to walk him through the stage of avoiding vikarma, performing nishkam, developing Atma Gyan. And by 7th chapter, now he's ready to speak about himself fully. But for practical purposes, he speaks a few verses about himself. Krishna gives, so this is the bottom-up approach. Right? So the top-up approach was the knowledge is coming from Krishna through parampara. Now, a person who is a transcendentalist, how does he get access to that knowledge? So he finds a guru who is connected to that parampara. And that's how the person gets connected. Right? Prabhupada gives the example of there is a powerhouse and the power is flowing through several grids of wires and coming into your house, and then you plug into it, and then you get access to the power. So the guru represents Krishna, guru represents the parampara, and most importantly, the guru is openly accessible to you. So that's why there is also focus on taking shelter of a live guru. Right? So sometimes people say that Krishna is my guru. Right? But one does not have the level of advancement to have a conversation with Krishna. Or sometimes they say my guru is, and they pick up some personality in the distant past, that guru, right? But that guru is not going to come and speak to you. That guru is not going to come and say, if you have practical problems in understanding what is karma and vikarma, if you have practical issues in performing your devotional service, that guru is not going to come and speak to you. So from a practical purpose, Bhagavad Gita recommends that the qualities of the guru is that you should be able to inquire from the guru, which means a living guru. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya ubdekshanti te jnanam. The person should be able to ubdesh. The person should be able to guide you. Why? Jnaninam tattva darshana. Because the person himself is practicing what he is speaking. So quick summary. So Gyan begins with knowledge that enables one to act, and it matures into detached working, Nishkam, leads to the knowledge of the self, Atma Gyan, of that of the Lord. Bhagavad Gyan protects against fall down. And because it is important, one must get it from a bona fide guru in an authorized parampara. Okay, so that gets me to the end. Let me see how are we doing with time. Or let me open it up for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for a wonderful summary of the chapter. Devotees, please feel free to raise your hand to ask any questions. Sandhya Mataji, yeah, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very helpful, actually, the lecture. I have a question that doesn't really pertain to this chapter particularly, but it's a question that I've been reflecting on from the beginning, and has arisen more strongly or less strongly over time. But it seems like the perspective that guides the worldview here, and also the focus on the varnashram and what is typical of different stages of life, as well as the it seems like it is mainly a Kshatriya focused worldview, and also mainly a man focused worldview. I also have noticed, and I don't know what it means, that among the chain of the disciples, I don't think I've heard the name of a single woman. And it seems like even when we talk about the different, the four varnas, right, that the role of the woman is mainly as a grihas. We don't really hear any discussion, even in passing, of a woman in a Kshatriya role or a woman in a Brahman role actually playing out in practice a Brahman role. And of course, Shudras are, whether they are born into it or whether it's by their character, right? It seems like it goes both ways through the Gita so far, as I've heard, as much as they are referred to, that they are really not talked about much at all. So all of this is just to say that so much of what I've heard is so valuable. And yet it tells me that there is the bias, inevitable bias coming from who these figures might have been at one time, whether it was Krishna's own background or Arjuna. And I apologize in advance. I don't mean to minimize who Krishna was or whatever, right? But this is my limited understanding as a fallible human being, so please bear with me. That Krishna's own background, his personal circumstances, Arjuna's background, and the nature of the disciples and the disciple succession, that it tells me that perhaps this is not quite as eternal or infallible as one might think at first glance. So again, I apologize in advance for presenting it in a provocative way. I don't mean to be provocative, but I do have this persistent question which I cannot answer, and I would appreciate any thoughts.
Okay. So a couple of observations. I think this whole debate about the role of women in Vedas and Varnashram, etc., it's an ongoing debate. You're obviously not the first person talking about it. There's a lot of discussion about it, which I think is beyond the scope of our current discussion. But sufficient to say, one of the points you said that, lack of women gurus, which is not true. In Vaishnava Parampara, there are prominent personalities who were women. They took disciples, and they were personalities that were venerated. Mirabai being a famous case, but there are other personalities also that were venerated. Honestly speaking, I did not get most of what you spoke for various reasons. I think mostly because of my what I was lacking in comprehension. So I'm going to park it, and hopefully we'll get to it. My apologies for that. We can move on to Rajeshri Mataji. Please go ahead.
So my quick question is, when you were talking about the Guru Parampara, right? So which parampara, like just now you said, like Mirabai, Surdas, Tulsidas, and those Rasik saints who are into that bhav, do they also come under Guru Parampara, or which category can you put them in? So I don't know about that. Hare Krishna.
So, practicing devotees and this includes the more exalted devotees also, they have followed through the process. So before they became advanced, they were advancing. Right now, they were special souls, so they advanced rather quickly. But nevertheless, they followed through the process. Now, I personally do not know which parampara, some Tulsidas. I don't know his biography, so I don't know where he belonged to. But Mirabai knows she belonged to the Brahma Sampradaya. So her guru Haridas Thakur, not the chanting Haridas Thakur, but the Haridas. He was not called Thakur actually. He's Haridas, the one who established the famous temple in Vrindavan, the Banke Bihari temple, right? So he was Mirabai's guru, and he was connected obviously to a bona fide sampradaya. So Krishna makes this point, right? How it is important for great personalities to also demonstrate by personal example. So to some extent, you're right. They did not need, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? He took initiation, and for both he took initiation from Guru and then sannyas initiation. Now Mahaprabhu is Krishna; he does not need it, but he still did it to show that yes, it is important to be done.
So can we also follow them as our guru and follow them? So that's my question. Or we need to also follow the Guru Parampara because they are also our devotees, right? So no, I'm not talking about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, he's Krishna, like the Rasik saints, like for example, Tulsidas, there are so many, like if you take in terms of South, I'm South Indian, like Annamacharya, Annamacharya Kirtans, if South Indians, he has written so many Kirtans. So can I take him as my guru? Like, because when I follow his
So
Kirtans.
will you be able to get guidance from him for your day-to-day issues?
No, I won't.
So,
But the kirtans which they have written itself is like, the kirtans itself talk about the guidance, how to live, because they have also been, maybe, they have their gurus. I don't know who are their gurus also. I have not read their biography, but when in the kirtans, it is entire Bhagavad Gita Sara, how to live, why are you, like they cry out and they say, why are you troubling me like this? The bhav which they have. So when I really listen to those bhajans and kirtans, I feel like, what? I don't know from where did they get this jnana, I feel so much of enjoyment.
So there are two comments that I'll make in this.
Okay. Sure.
So one is that people have a reluctance to surrender to a living guru because they have reluctance to follow the instructions of the guru. So if you actually take shelter of a guru, the guru will tell you that do this, don't do this, right? So because they have reluctance to follow the shelter of a living guru, they try to take shelter of a guru that is not living. So I can say I take shelter of Tulsidas, and Tulsidas is not going to come to me and say, Bhayahari, you should chant your rounds properly. And, don't waste your time doing this. But my Guru Maharaj does come and tell me, you need to chant your rounds properly. You need to read the Bhagavad Gita. So it is a little humbling to be able to take instructions and follow them. So people who are reluctant to surrender, they try to, this is not your case for sure, but there are people who will use this, that person is, yes, Tulsidas is exalted, or whatever he is exalted, he is presenting his realizations. He reached that stage because of his own development, right? He went through taking shelter of a guru, of going through purification, getting the mercy of devotees there. He's sharing his realization, right? It's not meant that you suddenly become that person. That now I am that person. Now I am also having the same advanced realization. The Alvars are crying out in ecstasy. So I am also crying in ecstasy. So I am an Alvar now, right? So this is Phalgu. This is being pretentious. The second thing is that since we are all at material contamination, we have this desire to we have the desire to get it to the front of the line, right? So we see around ourselves, we see this one person sitting and trying to chant in the temple. We see this other person trying to clean utensils in the temple. We see the third person trying to read Bhagavad Gita. And we say, they're elementary kids. I want to go to PhD stage, right? I want to start crying in the pleasure of Krishna, right? So what happens? What happens when an elementary kid goes to PhD level? They will fail, right? So that is why Prabhupada's instructions, which resonate with Krishna's instructions, are very simple. That take shelter of a guru, follow the instructions, make advancements, and then it is inevitable that the stage will manifest. Right? You cannot force it to manifest. When you follow the process, it will manifest. Okay. Thank you for sharing your
No, thank you
realization.
so much for giving, some insight. I had these questions up for a long time. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Right.
Hare Krishna.
Parampara Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhuji, for wonderful class. Prabhuji, I have a question with text 2 where Krishna says this disciplic succession is through the saintly kings, but we see that the knowledge normally is transferred from Brahmanas to the Kshatriyas and our other classes. So is it like the kings taught those knowledge to the Brahmanas? How did the Brahmanas get those knowledge? And again, like even we say like Krishna is indifferent to those classes, but it's still like for deity worship and we need like Brahmana, Diksha or initiation. So still Krishna wants that we raise to a standard of Brahmana level. So he doesn't say that you have to be Kshatriya. So how do we see that? How Brahmanas get the knowledge? Because it is transferred through the kings.
Good question. I think you have two questions put in this. One is that when Krishna says that that in this way, this knowledge was passed by the saintly kings, he's speaking about Raj Rishis, right? Prabhupada writes in the purports that he's speaking about kings who are taking shelter of those who know and act upon that platform. Does not mean that this knowledge only comes from the Kshatriyas, right? He's also speaking contextually because Arjuna is a Kshatriya. So he's saying, as a king, you have many, many responsibilities, which Arjuna at that point is wrestling with. So more than anybody else at this point, you need this knowledge, right? So it's a very contextual statement, but the statement that you're making is absolutely true, that the knowledge is not tied in with the varnas, right? It's not tied in that only the Brahmins can give this knowledge to the Kshatriyas or only the Kshatriyas can give this knowledge to the Vaishyas. The qualification is, like Krishna says in 434, that Jnani Nam Tattva Darshana, that a person who himself has understood and realized the truth is now qualified to give that truth. Second point that you made was that Krishna has indifference to the varnas, but then there is also this understanding of Krishna favoring the Brahmanas, right? And he glorifies the Brahmanas, especially in the Bhagavatam, right? It says Brahmanas are my right arm, and etc., etc. So is there favoritism there? Answer is yes. It's just like in a class, the teacher is more favorably inclined to the bright students because the students have taken to heart what the teacher is giving as homework, what the teacher is teaching. But that does not mean that the teacher is actively going to the class and saying, you two become bright students and the rest of you become not bright students. He's giving the same opportunity to everyone. Now, the ones who take that opportunity, the teacher will actually become favorable to him because they're resonating with the desires of the teacher. And so the Brahmanas, they are more in line with the desires of Krishna to lead a life of renunciation, to live a life of austerity, to lead a life of guiding others. Now, but Krishna does not chase after people saying that, okay, of this 10 people, only you two will become Brahmin. All the 10 people have the same opportunity to become Brahmin, and he's completely indifferent to that. Which two take to that that varna. So that is the indifference of Krishna. This is actually expanded more in the 9th chapter, where Krishna talks about his simultaneous indifference and favoritism also. Right? So since you asked, I spoke about it, but we'll speak more about it in the 9th chapter. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. Thank you.
Hare
Srishma Mataji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji,
Hare
please accept my
Sharadya
humble
Mataji.
obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, I wanted to ask that you said that karma and jnana are the different milestone on the same path. And also, while studying chapter 4, we came across, like Krishna talks about, demigod. There is a mention about demigod worship and how and karma kanda, like how these activities, even though they are not directly linked to Krishna, but they are somehow leading up to Krishna. And before in Krishna consciousness, even Prabhupada, some people ask Prabhupada that all, and there is a philosophy in Vedic Sanatana Dharma that all the paths lead to Krishna, or everything leads. But Prabhupada, did not say that it's correct. That and even in this verse, we see where Krishna tells that what is the destination of a devotee, a karmakandi, a jnani, and that you explained in the lectures, Prabhuji. So my question is, Prabhuji, then like sometimes when we see someone being involved in karmakanda activities, or someone doing demigod worship, we encourage them to come to Krishna consciousness. And but sometimes some people don't want to. So in that situation, should we continue to should we feel disheartened, or should we continue, or should we just guide them and then leave it up to Krishna to take over and help them? Means I know as a preaching movement we do this. So that was my question, Prabhuji. How would you say if we should accept that they are going to Krishna eventually and leave it alone, or we should continue to strive to help them?
Okay. Excellent question. And I have, I guess, 3 quick responses to it. I'm just being conscious of time. The first is that everybody has their own journey for advancement. So I think we have to understand, and this is a point Krishna will also make later on, that Sahasranam, that of thousands of people, one take to spirituality. Then of thousands of people who take to spirituality, one will take to Krishna consciousness. And of thousands of people who take to Krishna consciousness, one in reality comes to him, right? So he talks about the rarity of devotional service. So it's also an instruction to us that not everyone will take to it, which is why the whole Vedas are there, which is why the Karma Kand is there, because more than 95% of the Vedas, they don't speak about Krishna. They speak about Karma Kand, because more than 95% of the people will not take to Krishna consciousness. They will take to fruitive activities. So that's one understanding that we have to do. Understand that despite whether we preach to them, don't preach to them, not everyone will take to Krishna consciousness. The second point is that it's like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that we should preach 24/7, and once in a while we should talk. Right? So the point that he makes is that preaching is that the prachar is through achar. Right? Now we understand that philosophy is an important part, but really speaking, philosophy will never touch the heart of anyone. Philosophy may touch the mind, but it will never touch the heart. What will touch the heart? You can touch the heart. When they see that this person is so we have those, you must have seen this also, we have those memory series, right, where people say how I came to Krishna consciousness. And these are Prabhupada disciples who came and surrendered, and now they're practicing for 30 years, 50 years. And what is the common theme over there? They met somebody who inspired them. I think maybe there are only one or two people who will say that I read the Bhagavad Gita and I was so inspired by the philosophy, I want to become a devotee. Now I know there are a couple of sannyasis who did take inspiration from that, but 99.9% of them is, I met this person, I really liked, I saw that he was happy. Take the example of Prabhupada, right? When Prabhupada was initially preaching, then if you talk to his early disciples, they did not understand most of what Prabhupada was saying. He had a very strong Bengali accent. His English was British English. The subject matter that he was speaking was alien to them. So these were young kids, most of them hippies in the 20s. They just would sit and listen to him, and they said, they could barely get 1% of what he was saying, but they said, we just felt that he had something to give to us. Right. So, and of course, Prabhupada is at a different level, but they were inspired by his presence. Right. So, so that's important for us, that prachar is more important than achar, and I'm sorry, achar is more important than prachar. And I think the third point over here is that. Regardless of points 1 and 2, we should always preach. Right. So Prabhupada wanted us to preach. Our Guru Maharaj wants us to preach. So whichever way we can, we should always preach, but never in a way that turns somebody away from Krishna. Right. So some of the devotees, they preach in a very direct way, right? So they'll go to somebody and say, you're eating meat, there is a special hell for you, where the animals that you eat will come and eat you, right? So this is in the Bhagavatam, right? It's there in the scriptures. So it's not that what they're saying is wrong, it's correct, but the way they're presenting it is wrong. So the person who is hearing this will say, I don't want anything to do with these people, and I don't want anything to do with the God that they worship. So you've taken a person who was innocent to a person now is averse to Krishna. So you've done a disservice, right? So the 9th offense against the chanting of the holy name is to preach to the faithless, right? So we preach with discrimination. Like wherever we can, we preach. Where we understand the preaching is becoming counterproductive, we do not preach. When we used to go for, now we don't, but we used to set up this Festival of India in Washington, D.C. And we used to get all kinds of people. They used to get, Christian missionaries who would come and say that since you haven't accepted Jesus, you're going to go to hell. And we were all told that never engage in a debate with them. Earlier on, we would be like, we were more immature. We would be like more, it's easy to have one-manship in conversion, right? In conversation, the person says you're going to hell, you say I'll probably see you before I go there. I'll see you over there, and your God is bigger than my God can beat up your God. So then it all becomes into a whole immature kind of a thing. So we were then, once we became a little bit more mature, the understanding was if somebody comes and is openly agnostic, then don't add fuel to the fire. And it actually worked. Sometimes, people would say, I'm very happy that you did not react. I like the fact that you were peaceful. I like the fact that you were able to tolerate it. So the end goal is if we cannot get the person close to Krishna, we should not take the person away from Krishna. Yeah?
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we'll take one last question and stop after that. Go ahead, Manshi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So you had said that Krishna, he gave this knowledge to four, right? And that became the four sampradayas, like Lakshmi, Brahma, Shiva, and the four Kumaras. So I was wondering, like, how do we understand the differences between these sampradayas? Like, for example, like Madhva, those who follow Madhvacharya, they don't see they see Lakshmi as just Jiva, right? So like these kind of differences, how do we understand them?
They don't. So the question is excellent, but I think the Madhvacharya seeing Lakshmi as a Jiva is not accurate. The difference is that it is accepting the fact that everybody has a distinctive, unique relationship with the Lord, and just to accommodate. So philosophically, the sampradayas are very similar. They accept the position of Krishna, they accept the position of Lakshmi Devi, they accept the position of the demigods. So there's not much difference in tattva. There is a difference in practice there. So, for instance, Sri Sampradaya, lot of focus on deity worship. Very, very strong focus on deity worship, right? In Brahma Sampradaya, more focus on study of scriptures, more focus on chanting of the holy name. In the Rudra Sampradaya, they are more attracted to Krishna's Bal Roop. So they tend to worship Krishna as a baby. So Krishna has made himself available through in many facets. And it is essentially to accommodate the different moods of his devotees, right? And that's what the sampradayas encourage. One gets attracted to a particular sampradaya because of the particular mood. Sometimes it's just because circumstantially that, like I said, predominantly in the South, Sri Sampradaya is there. So somebody is born in the South who's Vaishnava will probably end up in following Sri Sampradaya. Most of the people who join ISKCON, without knowledge of the sampradaya, they end up in Brahma Sampradaya because that's what it is. That's what it is. It is joined. So the philosophy does not differ a lot. There is difference in the finer aspects of the practice. Okay. Thank you so much. My apologies for running over time. We'll end over here. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय, जय गौर प्रेमानंद।
Thanks, bro. Thanks.